and welcome to another edition of CCK Live. My name is Brandon Biva, and today I'm joined by my colleagues Alex Gamache and Kayla D'Onofrio. Today we're going to be discussing some of the top reasons why VA claims are denied. But before we get into some of those top reasons, let's first reintroduce an overview of the VA claims process. So, as we know, veterans who suffer from an illness or injury related to their military service may qualify for VA disability benefits. In general, veterans must provide proof of three things in order to be granted service connection and receive compensation for these injuries or disabilities. Number one is you need a current condition, which is usually diagnosed by a medical professional. Number two is you need actual evidence of an in-service illness, injury, or event that caused that disability. And then lastly, number three, you need a nexus or a link between the current diagnosis and the in-service occurrence. If service connection is warranted, VA will always assign a disability rating that corresponds to the amount of monthly compensation that the veteran is going to receive. Now, in order for veterans to file a claim for benefits, they can typically do so by filing this form, which is called a VA Form 21-526EZ. There are many ways you can submit this to VA. One of the ways is by using VA's online e-benefits platform and filling out the form electronically. You can also fill out the form and submit it to the Department of Veterans Affairs by mail. You can also submit the 526EZ in person at your local VA regional office. Or lastly, you can also file this form with your VA legal representative. As we understand, these steps seem relatively straightforward, but as many veterans and we at CCK know how complicated and confusing these VA claims processes can be and how often these claims are denied. So in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the top reasons why VA claims are denied. As we know, VA may deny VA disability benefits for a variety of reasons, but today we're going to go over some of the most common that we've seen. Alex, would you mind introducing one of the first common ways or one of the top reasons why VA denies claims for us?
Yes, I think one of the main questions veterans ask is, do I need a diagnosis for a condition? So the short answer is typically yes, but sometimes you don't always need one. So basically, veterans need to have a current condition to establish service connection. Here, current means that you are experiencing symptoms and effects of the condition at this very point in time. However, VA often overlooks the fact that you do not technically need to have a formal diagnosis. While it's an easier path for service connection if you do have that diagnosis, the law states that you do not need one to be eligible for service-connected compensation. For example, chronic pain is not something that gets a formal diagnosis, but it causes functional loss and impairment. As such, it should meet the standard of a current disability that is eligible for compensation. So ultimately, the condition does not need to be diagnosed, but it needs to be related to service and something that impairs your daily functioning and earning capacity.
Great information. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, the diagnosis part is sometimes the sticking point for most of these claims. Kayla, can you talk to us about another top way or a top reason why VA tends to deny these VA claims?
Sure. So the next topic is sort of the second step that Brandon mentioned earlier in terms of the different elements that you need to qualify for service connection. So it's failure to prove an in-service event. Here, VA is looking for something that happened in service that may have caused or contributed to the onset or aggravation of a current condition. So examples of this might be evidence that you were injured in a training accident, evidence that you were exposed to loud noises or witnessed a traumatic event, or maybe you were in a certain location where you were exposed to some sort of toxic chemical. Any of these types of incidents may lead to a subsequent disability and thereby qualify as an in-service event. Generally, when VA is doing this part of their claims process, they're looking for service personnel or service medical records that document that in-service event, such as a treatment record showing that the veteran treated for or was diagnosed for the claimed condition, documentation that the accident or other traumatic event may have taken place, confirmation of being in a certain location, etc. However, if veterans don't have those service personnel records or service medical records related to the in-service injury, event, or illness, they can still submit other forms of competent and credible evidence, including lay evidence. Lay testimony can come from the veteran themselves, talking about what happened to them in service and how their condition has manifested as a result. Fellow service members who witnessed the event or witnessed the veteran's symptoms onset in service can also provide lay testimony, as can family and friends who can outline the onset and progression of the veteran's condition and how it affects them on a daily basis. So in certain circumstances, VA can rely very heavily on this lay evidence, and it can be really influential in their decision-making process.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point, Kayla. I think oftentimes, much like we've mentioned in some of our past videos, lay testimony is a piece of evidence that is oftentimes overlooked. But another cause or another reason why VA would deny a VA claim is confusing an in-service event with a disability. Sometimes veterans get confused about whether exposure to Agent Orange is an in-service event or a claim in and of itself. Exposure to Agent Orange in and of itself is an in-service event and should not be claimed as a disability. Instead, Agent Orange leads to many debilitating conditions for veterans, which you can claim service connection for. So veterans might say that they have a certain cancer due to Agent Orange or Agent Orange exposure, but they should not simply file for Agent Orange. Instead, these veterans who fall into these categories should file for service connection for the condition that they believe is due to their exposure to Agent Orange. So differentiating between the actual in-service event and the actual disability is something that veterans should be aware of when they're filing these claims. And oftentimes the confusion between the two is why VA would deny these claims. Alex, can you talk to us a little bit about some medical evidence and how VA or why VA would deny a claim due to medical nexus or medical evidence?
Yeah, so a big reason why veterans get denied service connection is the lack of having a medical nexus. So a nexus opinion establishes a link between your current disability and the in-service event. The standard here, and the standard that VA typically uses, is at least as likely as not. Nexus opinions often come from the VA during compensation and pension examinations. If the examiner gives a negative nexus opinion, meaning they find that the condition is less likely than not due to service, VA will likely deny your claim for service connection.
Exactly. Key language is always including at least as likely as not if a veteran is going to submit some evidence sort of combating VA's own medical nexus that they may or may not have obtained on their own. So piggybacking off of evidence, Kayla, can you talk to us about one of the other top reasons why VA would deny a claim?
Sure. Another top reason that VA denies claims is simply just lack of evidence in the file. Specifically, lack of evidence that would allow them to make a favorable decision. Generally, VA has what's called a duty to assist, meaning that they are required to gather information to help the veteran submit information to support their claim. This would include things like service personnel records, service medical records, VA medical records. It may include scheduling the veterans for exams, so long as certain circumstances are met. But VA is responsible for at least making a reasonable effort to obtain those records. And if they're not able to, they do have a duty to notify the veteran that they weren't able to obtain the records and allow the veteran the opportunity to submit the records themselves while letting them know it's ultimately their responsibility to let VA to provide those records to VA. They'll do this using what's called a Veterans Claims Assistance Act notice or a VCAA notice, and that letter will outline exactly what they're looking for from the veteran and generally provides them with 30 days to respond.
Great, Kayla. Thank you. So speaking of medical nexus and evidence in the file, another reason why we see VA deny claims, or another top reason why VA denies claims for service connection or increased ratings, is due to a negative C&P exam, or because a veteran had missed a compensation and pension examination that the Department of Veterans Affairs had scheduled. Now, a compensation and pension exam, or C&P exam, is an examination that VA typically requests for any veteran who files a claim. This is very typical of any veteran who has been involved in the initial claims process and definitely in the appeals process as well. The purpose of this exam is really to evaluate the veteran's claim condition and also determine if service connection is warranted. During the exam, the examiners will also collect evidence and assign a rating if they believe that service connection should be granted. VA adjudicators tend to give a lot of weight to these C&P exams, meaning that a negative or even an unfavorable exam can potentially severely impact a veteran's likelihood of winning a grant of benefits for their claim. An unfavorable C&P exam might state that the veteran's condition is not related to service or not as severe as they had initially claimed. For more information on overcoming a negative C&P exam, we've done a video previously on this before. This can also be found on our blog, so take a look if you're looking for more information regarding how to combat a negative C&P exam. We do want to note that it is extremely important that veterans attend their C&P exams, much like we've mentioned in our previous videos, because if a veteran fails to report for a VA compensation and pension examination, VA can use that failure to appear as basically the only reason to deny their claim without even considering any of the other evidence that may have already been submitted. If you have a good reason for not being able to attend an examination, we advise that you should inform VA right away in order to seek a rescheduling date that might fit in your schedule a little bit better. But as I said, if you're looking for more information regarding how to combat these negative CMP exams, if you have one, take a look on our CCK blog. We have a ton more information available there for you as well. So, kind of moving away from medical nexus and sort of medical evidence and things of that nature, Alex, can you talk to us about another top reason why we see VA deny some VA claims?
Sure. So another big reason why VA will deny your claim is just having an incomplete or incorrect form. So as with any other benefits application, failing to include the accurate information on the forms can severely hinder the claims process. With VA disability forms, veterans are required to fill in detailed information about themselves, including contact information, sometimes family details, previous military history, medical history, evidence providing a disability, such as records or lay statements or buddy statements, basically anything that has to do with your claim. So failing to provide the information or forgetting to fill out a particular document section will limit VA's ability to approve your claim. So before filing the claim, veterans should check to make sure they have provided all the necessary information, filled out the correct forms, and submitting all of the correct evidence. They should also make sure that the evidence and forms they're submitting is consistent with prior forms or evidence they've submitted in the past.
Absolutely. And this is really kind of piggybacking off of what we opened with when we're talking about the initial filing process with filing your claim on a VA Form 526EZ. The form is a bit long, it is a bit lengthy, but it does ask for some very specific and very important information that VA is going to use to start your claims process and also start the process of gathering evidence to support your claim. So I think we have one of the most important, or some of the most common ways that we've seen a veteran get denied. Kayla, can you talk to us about the very last, most important, and sometimes the most common reason why we see VA claims get denied?
Sure. So the last thing that veterans need to know is that they do always have the option to appeal. Once you receive a rating decision, you have 1 year from that decision to appeal. And we always recommend filing an appeal if you can, as opposed to filing a new claim, because it's going to help preserve the effective date and potentially get you a lot more retroactive benefits by keeping that claim stream open. There are a lot of different appeal options to be aware of, depending on whether you want to submit new evidence and who you want looking at your claim. So we do recommend reaching out to an accredited representative to help you navigate that appeals process, since there are just so many small details and nuances to be aware of throughout that process.
Absolutely. I think we've touched on some of the most common ways. Of course, we can't go over every single reason why VA denies these claims, but I think we've provided some of the most common reasons or some of the most common causes of VA denying claims so far. If you're looking for more information on the VA claims process or anything VA disability related, you can also find more information on our CCK website and our CCK blog. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel to be notified of when we're putting out future content and future videos and future pieces of information for you. And thank you for watching.